Well, good morning, Trinian friends, and welcome to this week's edition of Patio Ponderings. I'm Pastor Sue, and I'm so glad you decided to join me today. So today, my patio is the sacristy at Trinian, and this room functions in a variety of different ways, really important ways for us in the church. One is that it is the place that we prepare for the sacraments. We also have all of our paraments, our altar cloths and our banners and all those things that we put out in the church for Sunday worship. But we also do our money counting in here, and we have our safe in here. So very multifunctional. And it's this money aspect that I've been thinking about today and want to talk about in relationship to our story this past week. So the story we had was this dinner that Jesus and at least some of his disciples are at with Lazarus and his sisters Mary and Martha. And this happens immediately after Lazarus is raised from the dead. Now, during this meal, Mary takes this inordinate amount of very expensive perfume and anoints Jesus' feet with it, wipes it clean with her hair, and it's this incredible, sensual, and very loving act that she does. And Judas, who is present, objects, and he says that, this costs a year's wage, and that money could have gone to help the poor, which feels like maybe that's a legitimate thing. But we are clued in an aside in this scripture to the fact that Judas is the one who manages the money for the disciples, and this money that is supposed to be used to help the poor, Judas has been helping himself too. So Jesus responds to all of this in this way with these verses, and this is John chapter 12, verses 7 and 8. Then Jesus said, "Leave Mary alone. This perfume was used in preparation for my burial, and this is how she has used it. You will always have the poor among you, but you won't always have me." I think that's a really interesting response, and it feels like kind of a hard response because it seems like Jesus is dismissing the needs of the poor. Is that really what's happening here? I think it's helpful to understand that when Jesus is talking about having the poor always with us, that Jesus is quoting or actually he's referring to a verse from Deuteronomy. So if we go all the way back to Deuteronomy in these section where God's people are being taught and how to be a community and how to care for each other, we hear this: poor persons will never disappear from the earth. That's why I'm giving you this command. You must open your hand generously to your fellow Israelites, to the needy among you, and to the poor who live in your land. So what I think Jesus is getting at here is there's an understanding that as long as imperfect and sinful human beings create ways of living our lives together in community, that there will always be some injustice. And one of the most persistent injustices that I think happens is that there's going to be a gap in wealth, that there's always going to be inequitable distribution of wealth due to things like greed and the desire of power and that type of thing. There's always going to be the haves and the have-nots. And so this passage in Deuteronomy then reminds us that we need to be particularly attentive to the poor, to make sure we have visibility into the experience of the poor and to fill their needs. That's really important. So what this becomes then is not a comment on not taking care of the poor, but it becomes an indictment of Judas because he was entrusted with the funds to to take care of the needy, and he has failed in that, and he has been using the money for his own purposes. So at its core then, what we get is a comparison between Mary and Judas as disciples. What is discipleship, or what should discipleship look like in love for neighbor and love for God? And what we come to understand is that Mary gets it and does it, and Judas does not, which is a pretty radical statement, because Judas is the one who has this kind of official title of disciple, and yet Mary is the one who seems to somehow understand that something significant is imminent. Jesus' death is within days of this dinner, and she just literally pours out her love for Jesus. And so in this whole conversation then, Mary is the one who is lifted up as the true disciple. And so that's the path through these verses and what Jesus is really getting at. That discipleship as love for neighbor and love for God is fulfilled by Mary and not Judas. And we will always have the poor with us, and that command remains. But in this moment, love for God is an act that Mary does incredibly well. So what do you think? When you heard those voices, what did you think? Did it kind of sound weird, or like not something we would expect Jesus to say? As always, I would love to hear what you have to say. I do hope to see you on Sunday. We are beginning Holy Week with Palm Sunday, and we also have First Communion. So please join us as we enter in to the foundational story of our faith. Have a great rest of your week, and I do hope to see you Sunday. Bye.